Hello guys and gals. Today's video is sponsored by our friends over at Vessi. It's actually a shoe brand I've been wearing for a few years now. And let me tell you the highlight marquee feature, waterproof shoes. Have you ever had an inkling to run around in the rain or actually step in a puddle? I know you get that feeling. Maybe it's your little stim. I get it. I have that same feeling too. But one of the genuine worst feelings is obviously having a wet foot. I genuinely hated it as a child. And one of the things that I enjoy is just a nice, comfy, relaxing shoe. The waterproof stuff is like the big added benefit. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, with the Courtside Classic series, you too can experience city life daily adventures while living a cool, carefree, waterproof foot life while actually upping your style points in your city, wearing these bad boys around, ladies and gentlemen. And you don't just have to wear these in the rain, okay? You can wear it when it's nice and dry outside. Actually, they're pretty much great for all weather types out there. And of course, if you gotta walk the dog real quick on a night when the grass is extra wet, well, that's where these bad boys come in. So ladies and gentlemen, if you want to make the most out of your city life with actual vintage looking comfort sneakers, try Vessi's Courtside Classic and get a pair today with an automatic 15% off at your first checkout. And get ready to stay cool and dry, and let's get to the video. Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and yeah, you read the title right. I'm thinking of quitting Linux and going back to Windows. No, this is not a joke. This is actually something that has been pondering in my head for the last couple of months, to be honest with you, okay? And ever since I had bought my RTX 4090 and made that video about a year ago where I literally built I basically made one graphics card turn into 32, I figured, yeah, maybe this could be something that I want to chase down the road, okay? So ladies and gentlemen, to start off with, I've been a Linux user primarily on my channel for 4 years now. I've been basically talking about how awesome Linux is, I've been pushing it, and I've been kind of what I believe to be a bit of an evangelist about it, okay? Yes, I have to tell people like you that I use Arch Linux, all right? I'm sorry, ever since I installed it, there's this weird brain worm that I've gotten in me that is impossible to remove, okay? There's like an aura of something you need to tell people all the time. But to give you an idea, I don't hate Windows, and I'm not going to shame anybody for using Windows. I know that I made plenty of videos ripping on Microsoft Windows all the time, and that's because of shitty decisions that Microsoft has made in regards to things like Copilot, and the fact that I genuinely do not trust everything that Microsoft does as a company, especially when they're running bare metal on my system. So why am I making a video considering of going back in time? Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking over here real quick, you can see that I've got a Steam page opened in an actual virtual machine right here. And this virtual machine, ladies and gentlemen, actually allows me to run full-on games like Yakuza Kiwami 2, no joke, right underneath an actual virtual machine using only one graphics card. At this moment in time, as I've launched this game, I am in fact splitting up my graphics card in real time, so I can use the same GPU in a virtual machine and my actual home computer, all right? Now there's a couple of reasons why one would do this route, and I'll give you a real world example right now. I use this to play Elden Ring co-op with the wife. So at the time, there was this mod called Seamless Co-op for Elden Ring, and it's a great mod that allows you to basically play the entire the entire game of Elden Ring with your friends. So at the time, my wife's computer just couldn't run Elden Ring. I think her GPU was a little too old. So I was literally too lazy to go and upgrade the thing myself. So I decided to split my 4090 in half and basically let her play with one half of the 4090 and I played with one half. And we basically got all the way through Godric before we just stopped, okay? Like, it was one of those things where we played a hefty amount of the game and we were playing it, you know, high settings, 60 frames for both of us. And it was truly an impressive piece of technology. Now, since then, I've been trying to chase that same high underneath Linux. Unfortunately, I haven't reached it. Now, to give you an idea, there is something known as GPU paravirtualization, which is virtualizing your graphics card. And a lot of virtualization tools have 3D drivers that now can let you play full games in them. So when I want to play an old PC game underneath my computer, I don't just try to run the binary. I just run it in VMware, okay, or VirtualBox, because they have 3D drivers. But that only goes so far, all right? What if you wanted to run something like Yakuza Kiwami 2, or a shooter, or a game relatively recent that came out underneath a virtual machine? Well, underneath Linux, there's not that many options, okay? For a while, there was something known as libvfio, which had some showcase of people playing Call of Duty Warzone 1.0 on it with really good frame rate, okay? They were splitting one card. So there's a problem with this entire setup. For one, it took a little while to get going, and currently underneath the 4090 that I use, it is perpetually in development, meaning that maybe it'll come out, maybe it won't. So upgrading too far down the road can cause you issues running this. Now, the other thing was something known as vGPU unlock, which required you to get access to NVIDIA's like developer business side of things and basically modify or alter the driver of your actual like NVIDIA GPU so you could resemble something known as a Quadro. So basically at a server level, what companies allow you to do is split or virtualize portions of your graphics cards, and this is something that's locked to big companies. And of course, when you get to a later point, you need to actually start patching your Linux kernel, and at this moment it becomes a matter of, do I really want to go through this for, do I really want to go through the insane effort involved that's just not even going to be entirely functioning for me, provided when some of these like developer agreements go up or expiration dates start to hit. So later on, I looked into something known as VirGL, which was an actual graphics driver for QEMU. But of course, this only went so far, and trying to get this thing to function appropriately underneath an NVIDIA graphics card rendered me with node errors and things that just would not initialize. And even when I thought it was working and it said it was working, I was getting like 2 frames, maybe 1 frame on average with a lot of these benchmarking tools, which showed me that yes, it told me it was working, but it probably wasn't working. Now, I saw recently there was something known as VirtIO GPU Venus, which was something where I saw a few videos of some users playing Dead Space Remake at like 60 plus frames per second, Resident Evil 8 Village in a very, very impressive frame rate. So I thought, oh, maybe this is the route that I should go down. But unfortunately, it also involved having an AMD graphics card, which I did not have. I had an NVIDIA one, and you had to start downloading specific Linux kernel patches. Now, if you think that I'm paranoid as fuck when it comes to running regular software in my system, I am triple paranoid when it comes to installing somebody else's patches in the actual OS's kernel itself. It's just never gonna happen. So that high that I experienced with my significant other playing Elden Ring was something that only was reflected in Windows. So at this moment in time, I wanted to kind of guide you through the history of why I even went down this road. 4 years ago, I made a video where the goofy Mutahar face comes from, where it was titled literally me building a virtual gaming like VM. And I did this because at the time for the virus investigation series, I was looking into this PUBG malware. But I didn't want to run malware on an actual system. I wanted to run it in a virtual machine that could run something like PUBG. So what I did was I installed my own, Linux operating system, and I used a Type 1 hypervisor. Now, the thing about a hypervisor is if you look into the actual types, a Type 1 hypervisor is something that is embedded in the machine's firmware. A Type 2 is something that you install on the machine, and it actually works with the machine's operating system. So when you install something like VMware or VirtualBox, there's a good chance that that is a Type 2. A Type 1 is something that is known as KVM, which is something built into the Linux kernel itself, and it's a part of the actual process. A lot of big servers use it, and a lot of smaller guys like me who just want to have split up GPUs use it all the time. So the thing about it is, Microsoft has the same thing. They have something known as Hyper-V. Now, Hyper-V is something that you can install right now if you have Windows 11 Pro. But you probably are using Hyper-V without knowing if you own an Xbox. See, every time you fire up a game on an Xbox, what it does is it launches a brand new virtual machine where it allocates a certain amount of the actual system's resources. So it runs games in a virtual environment. It sandboxes a game from the rest of the Xbox's operating system. So the way that Hyper-V works is you have Hyper-V, basically your host computer, and your actual operating system, so Windows, like what we're using over here to record my footage, my desktop, this is running in a virtual machine. But you probably won't notice it because that's how Hyper-V works. And within Hyper-V, you can then create multiple machines. And then you can do things like GPU partitioning, which we'll get to later on. So the thing about all of this is when I started making that video, it was pretty simple. You know, I built a Linux box. I basically had a integrated GPU, which was a graphics processing unit that's built right into your processor. And I had my RTX, I think it was like the 1080 or the 2000 series at the time. So what I did was I used something known as VFIO, and it hijacked the card as the system was booting, meaning Linux could not access that graphics card. I then passed that over to the virtual machine I had built, and lo and behold, I could game underneath Windows. Now, one of the first few videos that I saw on YouTube was like literally right here, where some guy was playing Assassin's Creed, Black Flag, just like this. And I was blown away by this. This was uploaded like 10 years ago, so it was something that was entirely possible at the time. And of course, one of the most popular videos I think that came out of this topic was a channel known as Level 1 Linux, Level 1 Techs. So Wendell had shown GTA 5 running underneath Arch Linux, or running underneath any form of Linux, to be honest with you. Nowadays, this whole process is super duper simple to do, and there's an entire wiki that you can follow that'll just basically work and get you up and running, I would say, within an hour, depending on your skill, right? If you're really skilled, I'd say minutes. But with all of that being said, the dream lasted for all of 2 years, because later on what had happened was games like Rainbow Six Siege had started to implement, really stringent checks into their anti-cheat. Now, anti-cheat technology is not new, and if you look at anti-cheat stuff now, there's a lot of popular games that just will not work underneath this method. But at the time, what had happened was my gameplay on Rainbow Six Siege was met with me being kicked out of sessions every single minute. And this happened because the anti-cheat, BattlEye, was basically detecting that I was in a virtual machine, and they kept kicking me out. So immediately I thought to myself, wow, the whole reason I built some of these things was to game on. If I can't play the games that I'm most passionate about, maybe this project starts to die. But then Valve had started to really put a lot of its time and money and focus into building the Proton systems. So nowadays, you might be using the Steam Deck, and the Steam Deck is truly a magical piece of brilliant engineering. It's one of the best handheld systems that I own, but a lot of it comes from Valve's Linux development. So basically, the way that Linux gaming works now is a lot of game developers and publishers develop Windows versions of games, but they don't have a financial incentive to build Linux versions of games. See, most of the world uses Windows. It's the entrenched operating system, and for the most part, it's a pretty decent OS. So when people are using Windows, all right, that's the primary operating system, and that's what games are developed for. That's what a lot of software is made for. Linux is more often an afterthought, and technologies like Proton and Wine, which translate Windows binaries on the fly for Linux-compliant POSIX calls, typically this is the best that developers and publishers are going to want to do. If it just works under this software stack, they're happy with it. Now, it's gotten so good that in the last couple years, it used to be 4 years ago when a brand new game would launch, you'd probably wait around a couple weeks for it to be playable. Now, games like Black Myth: Wukong pretty much work right out of the box. I was playing this on the Muda console in my basement, which runs on SteamOS, a customized fork of Linux that literally gives you that SteamOS interface on an actual, box. I was playing it just fine on it, okay? Black Myth: Wukong works great. Counter-Strike, because it's a Valve game, has an actual native Linux version. Dota 2. And of course, the fourth most played game, fucking PUBG, somehow with 720,000 players still on, that is obviously borked because of the fucking anti-cheat. Naraka Bladepoint, Apex Legends, Once Human, GTA 5, Rust, Path of Exile, Elden Ring, a lot of these games work pretty well underneath Linux, okay? In fact, if anything, they're about as closest to the Windows experience as you're getting. So for anybody that's gaming, provided you're not playing fucking Call of Duty, which, sure, that might be the one game other than PUBG in this list that's completely borked, and Rainbow Six Siege, and for some reason EA Sports Football Club 24, which I heard is great, but it's not worth me installing Windows over. A lot of the stuff works just fine underneath actual Linux's Proton, and it works just as good as Windows. And honestly, if you sat down somebody and just hit the play button and gave them access to a game, they wouldn't even be able to tell what operating system they're playing on. It just works that good. So at this moment in time, I had done a little computer upgrade and I went to the RTX 4090. So I went from having 2 graphics cards in my computer to having 1 GPU. And the reason for that is the RTX 4090 is such a fucking behemoth of a card that you literally cannot fit anything underneath it or around it. That card will just absolutely take over your system. Now, it is a great card. For the price that you're getting, all right, you're getting a pretty strong GPU. The problem is you can only have one of these things in your system. So I also have an AMD Ryzen CPU, which doesn't come with an integrated graphics card. So I decided to do something known as single GPU pass-through, where I was basically swapping my graphics card between operating systems like it was hot potato. So what I had done was I created a set of scripts that as I was launching a virtual machine, it would basically uninstall my graphics card, okay, unload it from my system, and just pass it over through a virtual machine. And boom, I'm playing Windows games. It would just be like a dual boot without actually going through the whole boot up part. Now, if I shut down Windows from my virtual machine, it would then basically reattach the graphics card back to the Linux virtual machine and fire up the desktop environment. So it's a pretty rough way, but you can use one graphics card across multiple operating systems. Now, the problem with this is compared to my original setup, my dream setup, this was one where I literally was just switching between operating systems and I lost some of that luster that I really cared for. So for instance, this is a diagram of my computer back in the day, okay, about a year or 2 ago. This box, this big box represents my computer. Now, my first operating system that I fire up is Linux, right? Denoted by 1, and this box that says Linux. Look, I'm not an artist. Don't rip on me. Whenever I needed to use Windows to record footage or stream to the public, I would basically fire up a VM that would just be Windows, right? So here is Windows, poorly done right here. And of course, if I needed sometimes Mac, I could pass up another VM. So the way that I would actually stream and record footage between this windows was to use something known as Looking Glass, which was actually a piece of software that allowed me to capture the frame buffer from Windows and show it into Linux. So I could put it into OBS and just stream it out for people to watch. And so even if my Windows operating system crashed for whatever reason, it would just reboot and none of you would know that, it would even have crashed. It was an insanely awesome piece of technology that I used when I had 2 graphics cards in my system. But obviously, since I went to a single GPU solution, this whole dream pretty much fucking died. Now, since a year ago, and I played Elden Ring with the missus, with 1 GPU, I've had this hankering to go back to GPU partitioning. So to give you an idea about how this shit actually works, I installed Windows in a second hard disk drive, and I actually have it running amongst my actual core system. So if you look real carefully over here, you can see that I've got a Windows system running on a 500 gigabyte SSD that I have plugged into my system right here. Now, in a lot of cases, this is a Windows operating system that just is minding its own business. It's running bare metal, and you can tell it because it's calculating the CPU just like it normally would. It's got 128 gigabytes of memory, and it's calculating all of my drives, SSDs, and it's even calculating everything on my actual GPU. Now, there's a lot of shame, obviously, involved with me if I had to switch back to Windows, but I wanted to look at the actual technologies that some of the community was coming up with to make the experience more like Linux and far less bloated than one would imagine. One of the actual tools that I saw was from a channel known as Chris Titus Tech, who is a pretty awesome Linux channel, but somebody that creates really amazing utilities to basically de-bloat Windows so you can get the most out of your hardware and the most, out of your actual system without dealing with all of the extra bloat that exists in Windows. So if you don't want shit like their AI, if you don't want even a calculator tool, you can basically get rid of whatever you wanted. But there are other tools. Obviously, one that I saw on Mental Outlaws channel, Kenny, he actually showed something known as Win11 debloat. Now, I don't personally think that debloating is all that important for Windows, just because I think that in a lot of cases, I compare it to like a car. People will be like, man, I could probably get some better gas mileage if I took out the passenger, seat out of my car and just threw it out. But yeah, you could get marginally better performance out of your vehicle. You just lose the ability to have a second person sitting in your vehicle, okay? Which might work for you if you have like no friends or anybody. I don't know how legal that might be. I wouldn't try it. But I kind of equate it to things like that. There's a lot of stuff that exists in Windows that you would consider bloat, but it might actually be required for another program to function or part of your actual software to work. But this script is one of those scripts where it gets rid of things like telemetry, tracking, which is something that I've constantly fought against. And it's something I hate about Windows. It's already got things like search results that if you want to get rid of with Bing, Copilot, all these things right there. So to use this kind of tool, what you effectively have to do is open up PowerShell as an administrator. Now, before somebody goes, but Muda, is this safe? No, or nothing is safe, okay? Whenever you're clicking that Run as Administrator button, you're basically giving keys to anybody on your computer to access the most radical depths that they can go to. So again, unless you really trust something, sure, okay, fine. But this is something that I highly recommend you go of your own accord. I am not responsible for whatever happens to your computer. So as you fire up Windows PowerShell right here, what you basically do is you copy this right now, this little code, this script block create IRM, and you just basically paste it and hit enter. And what that'll do is load up that actual script right here. So in order to debloat Windows, I would think the best way to go about this is to do just the default mode. Now you could do app removal mode where you start removing things like Calculator or Paint or whatever tool you wanted. If you don't use the calculator in Windows, you probably don't want to keep it. You can remove it. But we're just going to go to default mode and hit 1. So what that'll do is it'll remove the default selection of apps. It'll disable telemetry, diagnostics, and app launch tracking, and targeted advertisement. Disable and remove Bing Search and Cortana, which I don't even think Cortana is part of Windows, but sure. Disable tips and tricks for the lock screen. Basically get rid of Copilot and everything you never wanted. So once you hit enter, you'll notice that Windows is going to start wiping things left and right. So as the script is executing, you can basically just like walk away a little bit. It'll take some time. You might not get any verbose information, but after a bit of time, it'll debloat Windows and you should have a Windows that is as tracking light as you want it. So as you can see right over here, it's working and it's removing Bing Travel, Bing Weather, Microsoft Office Hub, Power BI for Windows, Windows Maps, Alarms, Skype app. So again, if you never ever use Skype in your system, you can actually start typing these things individually and realize, uh-oh, it all went black. Everything is good. Everything is now removed. Now, earlier in this video, when I was talking about like different virtual machine technologies, one of them was vGPU unlock. Now, obviously, when you work for a big company where they purchase massive cards like these NVIDIA Teslas and these like data center cards where they cost a infinitely high amount of money compared to what you're buying at Best Buy, but they're designed for big research companies, big organizations. See, they come with special software that allow you to split GPUs or partition them for everyone around. Now, if you want to get access to this without paying a crap ton of money, then you use Hyper-V. Now, at the time, I could have bought one of these cards. Like, they're actually selling some of these NVIDIA Tesla cards for like $200 on eBay. Now, I would rather trust a $3 hooker in Tijuana before I decided to even purchase a graphics card off of eBay, because I know fucking damn well what these graphic cards have been through, and I know damn long how they're gonna last on my home system. Now, once you actually get your graphics card installed on your main system, what you can basically do is you can go all the way to your local directory, go to the Windows directory like I'm showing you, and go to that scary, spooky System32 directory. Inside your System32 directory, there will be something known as driver store, file repository, and of course, and amongst all of these folders, you're going to just keep tapping the N button until you get down to something known as the NVI, I think it's what it is, so NV display. So once you see NV Dispy and NV Dispig, you're going to download NV Dispy because that's the kosher one to have. You're going to copy that over to a special folder on your system that you can just call on your host device, send to virtual machine, okay, or VM. And again, once you copy it over there, your next step is to go back to that System32 directory, and inside here, type in NV and then star.star, which will be your wildcard. And you're going to give it a little bit of time to search through this directory until this little magnifying glass stops shaking. And you're going to basically Control A to highlight everything in this directory, and just Control C, copy it, and copy it to a special folder where you have all of this stuff ready to go. Now, once all of this is copied, okay, you're going to go into your virtual machine directory, your Hyper-V manager. You're going to create a new virtual machine. And in the new virtual machine, what you're effectively going to do is specify a specific name. So you can call this, I don't know, I guess, GPU if you wanted to make it really easy. When you go to a specific generation, you want to make sure these are in generation 2. All right, generation 1 will not work, so don't even bother going there. When it comes to memory, depending on how much memory you have in your system, give it a healthy amount. I have 128 gigabytes. I decided to give a virtual machine 20 of those gigabytes, okay? I'm sure both systems will be just fine. Of course, in your networking, make sure you select a default switch. And when it comes to hard drive, give it like 200 gigabytes or however much you want to give it. Just because if you're going to be installing games on it, especially modern games, you're going to want to have as much space as you can reasonably allow. And of course, at that moment in time, you can download a copy of Windows 11 from the actual Windows storefront and use that to install underneath this system. And now at this moment in time, we're going to be doing a little bit of PowerShell scripting, buckos. So we're going to be splitting up our GPUs like champs. So you're going to open up your terminal here real quick. And actually, you're going to want to open that up as the administrator, just because we need some administrator privileges to be running a certain command. Get VM host partitionable GPU. Hit enter and copy all this information. What's important is the values that are presented here, okay? So you can see that I've got 1 billion total VRAM, available VRAM, everything. So when you're going to be writing the next part of the script, you want to make sure this script is going to allow you to be within these values. So you're not really going to be running into errors or crashes. What you're basically going to be doing is writing a script that uses around, I would say, 80% of the values you see listed here, just to basically achieve, no crashes and no issues. So first things first, you're going to do $VM equals, and you're going to type the actual name of your Hyper-V partition you made. So if you called it GPU-P, for instance, right, which in my case, if you actually go into your Hyper-V manager, you can see that once you fire it up, it'll give you the name of your actual virtual machine. So this one is Windows GPU-P. Yours can be whatever you named it. You type in Windows GPU-P, all right, not PIP, and then of course you can just bracket that off. And then of course as you go down, you want to do add, all right, VM GPU partition adapter, right? And of course it'll actually give you the fills right here. So just hit tab, let it do what it needs to, dash VM name, and again, make sure you match these cases. So higher case, lower case, very important when it comes to writing scripts. This is not like your English class where maybe you might be able to get away. Computers absolutely rely on that exact definition. Set VM GPU, all right, partition adapter, and then of course VM name, all right, like that, $VM. Now at this point, you're going to be entering in a few values. And this is based off a PowerShell script that I saw on Level 1 Tech, but I'll guide you through exactly what you need to enter. So when it comes to the first variable, minimum partition VRAM, you want to give it something like, I don't know, 80 million, for instance, right? This is just based off of my actual GPU. Your numbers will be different, and it's based on a percentage of what you saw in that, GPU table we literally queried like a minute or two earlier. So I gave it the number of 80 million. Now, I gave a max value of 800 million. So it's not going to look clean when I'm writing this out, but the idea is you have your minimum partition and your maximum partition VRAM will be, like, for me, again, 800 million. So again, it doesn't look really that different in video. And again, I could have used a better number, but the idea is these are the two numbers you're going to want to have. So one thing that you can do is open up a little notepad and just basically say, here is the minimum value, so keep that on top. And you can take the larger value and just copy it below. So immediately you can just highlight this minimum, copy it, and just paste it into this as needed. So at this point, the next thing we need to be typing in is optimal partition VRAM. And optimal and the max is always going to be the same number, okay? So the way that you look at this is the minimum, anytime you see minimum in any of these like arguments, just give it the minimum value. If you see max or optimal, give it the max value that we have. So when it comes to optimal, take that maximum value, paste it in there. And of course you want to do min partition encode, and minimum partition, obviously take that smaller value and just toss it in. So max partition encode, All right, take that large value, optimal, just copy that in there. And again, optimal partition encode, you're going to take that max value and just paste it in there. So minimum partition decode, again, take that really minimum value and just copy it in. Max partition decode, again, the optimal, just copy it in there. Optimal partition discode, so optimal partition decode, copy that in there. And again, min partition compute, so dash min partition compute, take the minimum value from an earlier entry and just put that in here. So boom. And again, min partition, go to max partition compute. And again, these are all done in one line, so that's what we're going for. So copy the optimal, put it into max. And again, the final one, and this is the final, do optimal partition compute, and boom. So once that's done, your next line, line number 6, should be set VM guest controlled cache types, and just do $true, and then VM name, again, just like you read earlier, and do $VM. So then you want to do set VM, you want to do low memory mapped IO space, and give it something like 1G lowercase b dash VM name, and then do $VM. And of course, the final line, set VM at high memory mapped IO space. That can be something like 32 gigabytes, all capitals, VM name, and of course, $VM. So that's your actual script right here. And we did that in a matter of minutes. And the reason why I want you to go down this road and not download a script from somebody else is because A, this is going to help you learn what you're doing, and B, a lot of those scripts may end up just having issues where you might not be able to get the intended effect. This will work. So once you're effectively done over here, you can save the script somewhere on your system and just launch it. Now, if you hit the play button, you might have an issue with execution policy, which if it tells you that, open up a terminal prompt, go to run as administrator, and inside your terminal prompt, you want to type in the word set execution policy unrestricted. And once you've done that, it'll give you a little warning, just say yes to it. Then you can run these scripts and they should just run within a second, and it should all be done on your virtual machine. Now, if you go to your VM right here, back into it, you can go to Device Manager and notice that, yes, there is in fact an RTX 4090 that is in this device. Now, for me, it says it works properly. For you, it will not, because you haven't actually connected the drivers associated with it. So to do this, open up your actual thing in the Hyper-V Manager, go to Settings, and inside your settings where it says the hard drive, go to the hard drive, click on Browse, and it'll open this little field, this little open box. Right-click on the actual VHDX and just hit Mount. And once you hit Mount, it'll open up a new folder that literally opens the actual table of your virtual machine. So in order to actually make your little virtual graphics card splitting stuff work, you need to make sure drivers are copied over. Now, anytime you update the actual graphics driver on your home system, you have to copy all of those files from your Windows directory on your host system to every virtual machine that you're running, just because that's how this stuff works, okay? That's how this splitting stuff is going to happen. So at this moment in time, on your actual virtual machine here, you go to the Windows directory, and what you're doing is you're going to System32. So down in the System32 directory, you're going to go to a folder known as Host Driver Store. Now, if you don't see this folder, and you probably won't, make this yourself. Again, same cases. Click on that, make a new folder under it called File Repository, and just copy that NVDSP-INF to this folder. Again, every time you update, you have to copy from your host directory to your virtual machine systems. Then, of course, go back to your System32 directory and copy everything from your host System32 directory that had to do with that NV file structure, and just copy it all the way over to System32 on your actual VM. Once that's done, basically go over to your computer and just unmount that system. So eject it, and you can now fire up your virtual machine and you're good to go. Boy, oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, does it recognize and work like normal. So about a year into this, NVIDIA has not stopped this, and I don't think they will, given the fact that this has been such a known thing at this point. And the only people that are really using it are the really, really insane wild ones like me who need to use this technology for, again, that idea of compartmentalizing everything in their system. Now, this is by far the best way of GPU paravirtualization that I have ever seen in modern systems. Now, obviously, do I think Linux can catch up? Absolutely, and I think it'll catch up and probably be better. But for now, Windows has this one advantage that I actually take advantage of. So for instance, why do I use, virtual machines? For one reason alone is running software. So for instance, if I wanted to record a video on my system, it helps for me recording games that oftentimes record at interestingly different resolutions. But when I'm downloading random games on the internet and random pieces of software, it is genuinely something that I have to watch out for. But let's say you wanted to play something with a little bit more oomph into it. Well, firing up Yakuza Kiwami 2 and running it at high settings is something that is easily possible underneath virtualization technologies like this. So you can see that I've seen the Sega screen, it's firing up, and just to show you that I'm running the game at a high resolution and a high possible graphic settings, I'm going to show you right now. This is underneath a virtual machine, by the way, that is splitting up a graphics card as we're actually talking. So here we're going to settings, we're going to graphic settings, okay? So you can see 1920 by 1080, 64 hertz, quality at ultra, okay? Now, of course, we can just hit continue, and of course, we go to slot number 4, it loads up perfectly. It's almost indistinguishable from the bare metal system. It's running on an SSD, running with all the memory, and boom, here it is. You guys are playing Yakuza Kiwami 2 underneath an actual virtual machine like this. And of course, this whole thing can extend to other games as well. It's not just this one title. I wonder if we can just do a quick little fight on the street here real quick. This is when you give me this game for an hour to play just for footage. I'm so overpowered in the game that I already have all the end game shit pretty much unlocked. Nothing can defeat me in this game. I wonder if somebody actually believes this is what Japan is like, right? You walk down the street and you just see some dude in a suit going fucking full Dragon Ball Z on a guy. Dude, it's insane. Now again, in the previous video that I've shown about this too, also I was running games like GTA 5 on a host system, and I was running games like Resident Evil 2 Remake, both really graphically demanding games in an actual environment, a host virtual machine style thing. But of course, like everything, there has to be give and take. And because this is a virtual machine, the problem is you're not really able to play video games that require anti-cheat underneath this. So a game like Cross Defiant from Tom Clancy's, I'm going to fire this one up. And the problem with this is because it runs on BattlEye, it doesn't have any issue running underneath this split virtualized GPU. The only issue is because we're running it in a virtual machine, BattlEye is definitely not going to be supportive of the fact when I try to play online. And I'll show you exactly how it works. So of course you can see right over here, we're actually playing the game just fine actually underneath this. So you can go to things like the firing range, and of course frame rate wise it works really, really well underneath the system. So you can engage in combat, and it plays just like a full PC title, right? Now again, the big benefit of using something like this is if you ever watch the video series by like Linus Tech Tips, really anyone where they have like 6 GPUs, 6 gamers, 1 GPU. This is the kind of stuff that, you know, pretty much those videos are powered off by. It's having the ability to take all of this raw power that we buy for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, and using it for more interesting things than just getting higher frame rates on the same games we've always been playing. Like I said, one of the key components for me using this was to play Elden Ring with my significant other, who didn't have a computer that I think could run that game from the GPU perspective. So to split my computer resources up and play Elden Ring cooperative with her was a pretty driving force for me. And since then, when it comes to using my computer in the best possible ways, designing one computer box that I can use to record videos, stream, edit, and everything in a clean way where I don't need to be bouncing from different streamer boxes or different like computers in general. I know that a lot of streamers use a dual PC setup. I like to have the dual PC setup, but all within one actual workstation that I can fire up within seconds at any given moment. Now, the thing is, obviously, being that we're in a virtual machine, it should come to no joke that playing this online is not going to be something that's possible. So here we're going to try searching for a match, and we should absolutely not be able to play this for longer than a minute. So it's found a player, and you'll see just if I actually can make it all the way through. It would be funny if I got my account banned. Like, actually, wait, if I got my account banned on XDefiant, would it be a ban for Rainbow Six Siege as well? This is like actually my main account, dude. I probably shouldn't be doing this. To be honest with you, I probably shouldn't be doing it. Boy, we've been kind of looking for a little bit right now. I don't think we're going to find those last 3 people. I think XDefiant might not be as lively as I don't think this game is as poppin' as I think it is. I mean, damn. You know, I don't think we're going to find a match on that game, okay? I don't think it's going to happen. Sad as it sounds. So look, at the crux of it, the most important part of this video for me is having interesting virtual machine technologies that makes my entire computer just more easy for me to use, my workflow. So again, for me, a virtual machine is great because when I'm recording videos or I'm, playing weird games or doing things like even that game No Players Online, I was recording well in a virtual machine because yeah, it's cool that I'm playing games like that. I also don't trust random software. And I kind of wish Microsoft's ethos of the Xbox, where they have the same entire platform, the idea of virtualizing the software, would have carried over pretty much into how people use computers these days. Look, lately I've seen people like Linus Tech Tips get hacked very recently. I think it was about a month ago that his Twitter account actually ended up getting hacked. And the thing about his Twitter account getting hacked was it wasn't that he ran shady software, he got actually phished classically. But to give an idea, there have been times where sponsor spots, like sponsor emails, contain programs or scripts that inadvertently launched that caused serious damage to their YouTube channels for some days because they were unable to have their videos be running. It was actually a nightmare for everyone. And it's the same story for any YouTuber, big and small. So when I create virtual machines like this, it's not because I'm building these things out of like sheer nonsense. It's because compartmentalizing your system and running software in these entire VMs protects you from actual serious dangers on the internet. Serious dangers like those same sponsor scripts and those same scams that I was talking about. It's one of the reasons why I think my YouTube channel and any of my social media channels haven't been hacked is because of the extreme care that I take in launching software and running things in general. It doesn't mean that we haven't gotten close. Obviously, getting phished is not something that is software dependent. It's something that is dependent on the person. And we've almost been phished before, as sad as it sounds. But when it comes to protecting yourself, logging into things like my YouTube channel is something that I have special virtual machines for that I log into simply to transfer files to and upload videos from. And after that, the VM is never used by yours truly. Until, again, I need to upload a video or have a VM fired up just so I can read chat while I'm doing a live stream. These are things that I kind of feel most people should pick up, most people should try doing. And as of recently, Microsoft has probably the best virtual machine solution at this moment in time for gaming and splitting up that hardware on your system. That doesn't mean Linux won't get there, but yeah, it's one of the things that has made me consider honestly switching to Windows. And it's probably not just that, it has a little bit to do with gaming as well. Playing a lot of these online games that my friends play and constantly keep inviting me to is kind of impossible when I'm running Linux. And so everyone else gets to play a certain game, like Warzone or Rainbow Six Siege, and I kind of have to sit there basically playing something that either is compatible or just not being so, part in gaming nights. And sure, I could use the computer behind me, but part of me just wants to have one system where I can kind of have all of my cake and I can eat it too without any compromises. But it was one thing I've learned about extremely weird niche systems like this, is that compromise is just a part of life. So, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to share why I'm considering switching back to Windows. Will I actually switch back? There is a 100% chance that I won't. The more I use Windows, the more I realize I'm actually trying to mimic the stuff that I miss from Linux. I've been such a Linux user for years now at this point that switching back to Windows might not even be something that I probably can figure out. There's still a million things that Windows is not good at. But when it comes to this one really awesome thing like GPU splitting, Windows is leading the charge. And I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that nobody's intervened, nobody's tried to stop this. And I'm kind of hoping that videos like this don't cause NVIDIA to decide to intervene and prevent stuff like this from happening, or Microsoft to limit this to more higher-end workstation systems. But, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and yeah, Windows is wild. It has some certain W's in a field of L's. I am out.